Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. Not only am I sitting in my bedroom and filming this intro, just holding my phone because my son is downstairs screaming at his video game, but I am going to film myself making dinner today. So this is unlike any other video I've ever made. If you've been here before, you know I usually talk about saving money, living frugally, paying off debt, but I really wanted to share in this crazy time some of our family favorite frugal meals. Meals that don't necessarily cost a lot to make, but that make a lot of food and can also easily be doubled to freeze for a later time. And I want to do one video per meal just so I can show you the entire process of cooking it that way. I was thinking that may be easier that way. If you want to try and make the same meal, you can just kind of turn on the video and follow along. If you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and stick around, as I do plan to make a couple of these over the next month or two. And my train of thought here is just that I'm a busy mom, you're a busy mom, and sometimes not only do we want something cheap, but we also want something fast and easy without having to go to the drive-thru. I hope you'll like them. I hope you'll find them helpful. Leave me your feedback in the comments and let's go ahead and start cooking. So we are going to cook our family's favorite meal. It's sausage, mashed potatoes, and corn. And here is the sausage that I use. I'm just gonna go ahead and open the packet up. And I don't like that gross casing that's on the outside of the sausage. So I just take a sharp knife and butterfly each sausage length and pull it apart. And then I just simply pull that casing off and I get rid of them all. I usually do 2 packs for our family of 4, and that feeds us all for dinner, plus has plenty of leftovers. So I definitely think this dinner could also be plenty of food for a family of 5 or even 6 if you're not looking for a lot of leftovers. So one of the other reasons I love this meal is because it's easy to double. Now I wouldn't necessarily freeze the mashed potatoes, but it's easy to double or even triple the sausage, and then you can go ahead and freeze the extra portions and just go ahead and whip up some mashed potatoes next time you want to eat this meal. So I am going to speed this up as I finish the rest of these, and then we'll move on to the next step. That's done, and now of course I have to wash my hands because touching raw meat definitely grosses me out, so make sure you're washing your hands really well. And then the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and season all of these on one side, and then I will actually flip them over and season them on the other side. My go-to seasonings are onion powder, garlic powder, ground pepper, and this is my very favorite. It's called Jane's Crazy Mixed Up Salt. It's super cheap. It looks like it's from the 50s, so I don't know, but it has a whole bunch of yummy stuff in it, and we eat it on absolutely everything. Okay, so now that everything's seasoned, we are going to go ahead and fry them in the pan in a little bit of olive oil. So I just have my tongs here, and I'm gonna put some olive oil in the pan and wait for it to heat up a little while. I usually turn the heat up kind of high for this just so it heats up more quickly. And what we're going to do is really get a nice sear on each side of the sausage. And I also will grab a bigger Tupperware. That way when the sausage is done, I can go ahead and put it in the Tupperware and let it sit there to free up the pan so I can cook the rest of the sausage. Now I usually use a much bigger pan for this, but I was worried you wouldn't be able to see inside of it as well, so I used this more shallow pan. So I'm going to have to fry these off in 3 different batches, which isn't a big deal because it really doesn't take that long. And you don't have to worry about the inside, whether or not it's cooked, because when we're done with this step, we are going to make some homemade gravy, and then we will put the sausage back in the pan and let them completely cook through. So you can see here that they are starting to turn brown and get a little crispy on the outside. I usually fry mine a little bit harder, to be honest. It's just our personal preference, but I'm not doing it here for this video just for the sake of time. So as soon as they look done to you, you can just go ahead and flip them over and let them cook again on the other side. Next, you're gonna need some chicken stock. I always make mine from scratch, so then I have it down in the freezer. And to defrost it, I simply put some hot water from the tap on top of the frozen stock and just shake it up real well. And I'll do this a couple of times over, and it usually defrosts enough stock that I need for the gravy. These are good now. I am going to take them out and continue on frying off all of the sausage, and then we will get started with the gravy. Just going back to check on my frozen stock progress here. If you do not make your own stock, you can actually use the box stock from the store, canned stock, beef stock, whatever you want. This is just our preference because I usually have it on hand, or even just plain water works. I like the chicken stock because I think it gives it some more flavor. When I'm not getting as much stock as quickly as I want because I'm impatient, I actually decide to put it in the microwave and defrost it for just a couple minutes. Now that the last batch of sausage is done, we're just gonna pull it all out and set it over to the side so that we can have the empty pan to make our gravy. And you do not want to wash this pan. You want all that little stuff on the bottom. I add 2 tablespoons of butter. And just to let you know, I don't measure anything, clearly. And you want to go ahead and whisk that around really well to melt it and start kind of scraping some of that stuff off the side of the pan. When you make homemade gravy, you need to add some flour to make a roux, it's called. So this is about 2 tablespoons of just all-purpose flour, and you need to mix it up really well and actually cook the flour, or your gravy could end up having a weird like raw flour taste to it. I don't know how else to explain it. So you just want to mix it around really well, get out any lumps or clumps because you really don't want a gross chunky gravy. You want a really nice and smooth gravy. Now we're gonna add chicken stock. I just add a little bit at a time so that I really can take my time stirring really well and letting it thicken up slowly. I find you get the best gravy this way. If not, it sometimes seems like it just doesn't thicken properly. And again, you want to try and get all of that stuff off the pan. I hate to keep saying that because it does sound kind of nasty, but it really is what gives it the flavor and kind of brings all of the flavors together. So you're just gonna have to be prepared to stand here and whisk for quite a few minutes if you really want your gravy to turn out properly. You can see here how thick it's getting. It's almost like a paste consistency. That means you're ready for more liquid. And again, we're just gonna repeat the process, pour some more in, stir it really, really well until it starts to thicken, and then add some more. Now that our gravy's ready, I'm going to put all of the sausages back in the pan to cook completely through. And like I mentioned, I usually use a bigger pan. You can use whatever size you want. This is gonna be a little tight, but I will get them all in there. Just put them all back in, and then I like to turn the heat down super low, and we're just going to let it come up and simmer for maybe a good 10-15 minutes. I'm also going to put a lid on it just to keep that heat in there and to keep any of the gravy from bubbling over because my pan is so full. All right, moving on to the mashed potatoes. First things first, I just grabbed a bowl, actually because it's easier for me to film over here on the island than at the sink, but I usually peel them over the sink. But for now, I'm going to peel them all into this bowl, and then I just have a pot here where I'll just toss in the peeled potatoes. And I just want to mention quickly while I'm going through here and peeling all the rest of the potatoes that this meal does definitely take more time than some of the others I will share in the future. But the reason I really wanted to share it is because it is so good. Everybody that ever tastes it loves it. And like I mentioned earlier, you're able to make bigger batches and freeze them. The other thing I wanted to mention is that one of the ways I reduce the time needed to cook this meal is I will cook it in batches. So I will either make the sausage portion earlier that day and then just make the potatoes and the corn at dinner time, or sometimes I'll even make the sausage or the potatoes the day before and just keep that in the fridge. This meal with the leftovers does not last long in our house, so there's no chance of anything going bad by the time we eat it. But doing it that way really, really cuts down on the prep time needed when you're making this. Just gonna rinse all the potatoes off, and then I'm gonna grab a new cutting board because nobody wants to cut on the raw meat board, and I'm just going to dice all the potatoes. I try to keep the pieces relatively small and similar in size. I'm not too picky about it, so if some of them are bigger than others, it's not a big deal. And I'm just gonna toss them in the pot, and then I will fill the pot with water and go ahead and put it on the stove so that it can come to a boil and cook our potatoes. Make sure you are putting this on really high, and I like to put a wooden spoon on top to keep it from over boiling. Now to check back on our sausage, and this looks done to me. You can tell it's done if you break any of them open on the inside and you don't see any pink anywhere, then you know they're done. Also, the gravy shouldn't be super thick, but it should definitely be sticking to the sausages. I don't know how much you can tell that from the video, but it is, and they are done. Now, once I'm waiting for the potatoes to boil, which can take a little while, I like to just take this opportunity and quickly clean up. Because there's so many steps to this meal, it can make quite a mess. And I don't know about you, but I don't mind cooking dinner, but I really mind the cleanup. My husband and I sometimes have a deal where I will cook and then he will clean, but since I have the time in between, I can't really leave the kitchen anyway. I usually just start cleaning up and then I have most of it done by the time we're ready to eat. The potatoes should be done now. I'm just gonna grab a fork and pierce them and make sure they are nice and soft like I like them. I drain them in a colander and then I immediately put them just right back in the pot. Now I mash my potatoes with a potato masher, and then I also finish them off with my hand mixer because we don't like them lumpy. We like them really nice and smooth and almost like a whipped consistency. And I do want to mention that my husband is lactose intolerant, so I make my potatoes a little bit funny. You can try this recipe. Him and my kids absolutely love it, but I do not use regular milk or buttermilk. I use a lot of butter, as you can see. That is a whole stick, and I've probably used 2 to 3 pounds of potatoes. I put in 1 egg. The only thing I season with is that Jane's Crazy seasoned salt that I showed you in the beginning of the video. Clearly, this isn't exactly what you would call a healthy recipe, but it is a really great comfort food. So here comes the part that might seem a little weird, but I put ranch dressing in my mashed potatoes. I apologize, I do not measure anything. I never have. And like I said, I season with the Crazy Jane's seasoned salt. And then I add almond milk because, like I mentioned, my husband is lactose intolerant. Again, sorry, no measurements. And then just grated Parmesan cheese. Then I grab my hand mixer and I mix it all up until it's super nice and fluffy and whipped. And I usually have somebody taste test, but nobody was around, and I eat keto, so I can't have the mashed potatoes. Now, like I said, I know my recipe is kind of strange, so if you have your own recipe for mashed potatoes, just go ahead and use whatever recipe you want. It really doesn't matter. The last thing we need to make is the corn, and this is the easiest. I simply just use the microwavable, steamable corn, pop it in the microwave, throw it in a bowl, and it's done. So that is the recipe and exactly how we make our family's very favorite frugal meal. Like I said, this one takes a little bit longer than some of the others I will share with you guys, but just split it up if you're short on time. It makes it much quicker, and I promise you're all going to enjoy this one. Thank you so much for watching today. I appreciate you. Please leave me a comment and let me know what you thought, and I hope you'll subscribe if you're new here.
Did you ever stop and think, why spend too much time just getting ready? Let me be honest, I don't know one single thing that I haven't done to make you notice.